Today we are going to be tying up a little fly that I have made and I have called the Squirmy Butt Fly. I'm sure it may have existed somewhere else. I've done some research and haven't really found it, but I call it the Squirmy Butt. It's tied on a jig hook with the slotted bead. This is a tungsten slotted bead, just so that way we can get the bead to come all the way up to the eye and sit like that. And then once you have all that done, start it off like any normal fly that you not typically would with the thread base. Make sure you put a good thread base down on. Clip off the tag end and continue a thread base back to the bend of the hook, and then I just give it some good open spirals back to the bead. Once I get back up to the bead, then you take your squirmy worm material. See, squirmy worm material. This is the caddis green stuff from Orvis. I think this stuff is actually called Sili worm. Yeah, it's the Sili worm in the caddis green. And then I start it right behind the bead of the fly and give it some good stuff. Make sure it's good and tight down. I leave that little nub in there for just a minute, and you'll see why here in just a second. And then I will pull it away from me into the back and lash it down all the way back to the bend of the hook. And if you've done it right, which is why I do it, it will be kind of slightly right on your side, and then I come back up once more, and that little nubbin's good because you can hold on to it. You can really get it good and flush and cut down there, and then I come back up and then come back down one more time. Just want to make sure this stuff is really good and down and attached to it. And the reason that I start my squirmy worm material right at the bead like I did is because then you have a good even body, and you don't have to worry about it. And we'll trim the tail to length in just a minute. Then once you get to this point here, you can take your chenille. This is the Pearl Chenille that Wapsi makes. This is the small, and then you want to take it and just tie it in right there with a few good wraps and wrap it all the way up. This is a size 12 hook with the 1/8 inch slotted bead. If you're gonna use ultra chenille on this and you can't get down to the thread core of it, I would start by tying off the chenille at the head just like you did the squirmy, so that way you don't end up with a big gap at the bottom and it tapers towards the head. It's best to have this where everything is really good and uniform on the body. It works better that way, and you don't have to use a whole lot of other stuff there to get it to work. I'm going to push that off to the side. And once you have your chenille, whatever you're using a chenille secured on, and you just want to wrap it like you would be tying a woolly booger. With the Pearl Chenille, I like to make sure that the fibers kind of all go back. Everything's facing backwards as much as I can, and we'll come all the way back up. Keep on going until you get to the bead, and then once I get to the bead, that is where I will then stop and secure this down with a few good wraps, front, back, and you want to trim off the excess of your chenille. I like to give it just a few more wraps just to make sure everything is good and tied down. Then whip finish. 2, 3, 4, 5. I like to give it twice just to make sure that everything's good and down. 2, 3, 4, 5. Cut off your thread. And then that's basically it. and you just want to take your squirmy material. I like to cut it just a hair longer than the actual shank of the hook. And that's it. And that's the way I tie them, to make sure that your squirmy material is coming really just good up at the top of the bent shank of the hook. These things can be tied in any colors you want. I like the black and chartreuse. It works really well down here for the sockeye, or if you're up north, they're called crappie. They work well for any of the panfish species, brim, bluegill, red ears, anything like that. Bass will actually eat it. I don't think I have one on my desk, but you actually can also tie them. You can actually also tie them on jig heads. I have done it. That's why I have these jig heads here for the conventional tackle. It's not just a fly. Size 10 and size 12 works really well. If you're going to do it on a 10, I would go with the 5/32 bead. I think it's the 5/32 bead. Yeah, the 5/32 inch bead. Just because it makes it a better profile. And there you have it. That is what I call the Squirmy Butt Fly. Like I said, catches anything from crappie to bluegill to bass. I've even caught stocked rainbow trout on it, and it's just a good little fly that I've made, and it works really well. Hope you enjoy. I'll have all the materials down in the link, down in the comments below, just so that way you know what we're tying.